Today's guest is Carolyn. She's the co-founder and chief creative officer at Humanity. She works at the intersection of strategy, storytelling, and creativity, helping organizations, especially those at moments of change, translate big, often complex visions into brands that people can truly understand, connect with, and move with. Carolyn, I'm so excited for this conversation. Welcome to Fully Managed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be part of this as well.
So I was doing some LinkedIn stalking and I love the way you think. So you've talked about brand as a kind of language, a system people use to understand who you are and where they fit. So I'm curious, when you step into an organization at an inflection point, what are the first signals to you that tell you like this language isn't translating anymore?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And organizations come to us when they have a new vision, they have a new strategic plan, they might have a new CEO or new leadership, but they have a new vision of the future. And where they want to go. And a lot of times the brand identity and the brand itself just hasn't evolved with it. Yeah. It's something that kind of needs to keep in step with your strategy. And, but then it's also one of the last things that people a lot of times think of when they're making their plans, when they're making their transitions, when they're making new offerings. So when we go in there, a lot of times we're asked, like they realize that they need to update their brand to fit this vision. And it's usually pretty clear when we start to talk to them. And a lot of times what we hear, like nobody knows what we do. We haven't updated our brand in 50 years, 20 years. And this is who we are and what we want to do. But people still think we're this.
Yeah. And a lot of your work sits in that gap between strategy and brand, right? So where the thinking is strong internally, but the story hasn't caught up externally. So what's the most subtle or overlooked way that gap shows up, even in organizations that feel like they're doing everything right?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a lot of times it's they're not making any traction. They're not making any forward movement with their brand audiences, they just talk to people too as well, talk to their brand audiences. And it's like, they have this big vision of doing this, but people still think that they're just this very small, singular thing or what it is, or the service that they provide. So I think it's leaders feel that frustration, or they feel that gap is there, and that nobody knows who they are. And then a lot of times when we do start out working with organizations, we will do some research, or we'll do some focus groups and some studies to find out what it is that people think or feel about the organization. And we've worked with several organizations, or are currently working with some, who nobody knows who they are. They don't know what they do. They don't know who they are, or it's a very specific demographic that knows. Like it might be, say, if it's a charity or not for profit, it might be an older demographic who has been donating to them for some time. But the younger generation just has no idea who they are. It has no connection to it. So it causes some very big problems as they look forward in terms of their donor base and an engaged volunteer base. Nobody is going to donate or be active with that organization if they don't know who they are. And if they have no connection to what it is that they do.
So the connection is so important when it comes to a brand,
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much, we always hear there's so much noise out there, it's cluttered, is so much going on. We see so many ads and brands throughout our day that we don't even notice them. So the best way to be able to be clear, to get that clarity and that understanding and that connection, is being very clear about what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you work with leaders who often have a very clear vision in their heads, but the challenge becomes helping others see it. So what's something leaders consistently overestimate about how well their vision is understood, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of leaders who have big visions, who are change makers. They have change making visions, but they also understand the importance of brands. They may not be able to do it themselves. They may not have the resources and capacity in house to be able to do that brand part, but they understand the importance of it, and they champion their brand. And so that's why they do reach out to us, or we do start working together. And a lot of times, so again, like I said, when we first start working with a lot of organizations, we do those focus groups, we do that research so that this new brand transformation can be sold in at every level to every stakeholder, because then there's proof. They have the data to be able to say, like, look, nobody knows who we are, or hey, look, everybody thinks that we just serve an audience who is 75 and over, when really we service anyone who is 18 and over. And so it's getting that data and those insights so that leaders or CEOs can feel confident in their decision to move forward, to relooking at their brand, but also be able to sell it internally to other employees, but also maybe it's boards. There's usually a lot of stakeholders that you have to sell something like this into. And it really is that upfront part that helps sell it into.
Oh, that's a sharp answer. I love it. And you've also said that clarity takes repetition. You know, that people need multiple entry points into an idea before they fully connect with it, which I found so interesting. So how do you know when repetition is building clarity versus when it's just becoming noise?
Yeah, great question. And all of us are met with so many messages, and we all have so many things going on that even internally at an organization, you need that repetition so that it has to be repeatable. It has to be memorable. It has to be repeatable. And we know, like, even, reading books about building habits, it takes at least 19 days to build a habit. And I think it's very similar with getting your message out there. People need to see it over and over again before it starts to really sink in, before they really tie your message or that consistent message to you, and that they understand it. And then once they understand it, then they have a connection to it. And I think, you can do testing throughout as well. So it might be brand sentiment or brand clarity, or there are different things that you can kind of test as you're going along to see if that recognition, if people are tying your marketing, your advertising, maybe even your tagline, if they are tying that to you and to your brand. There are several ways that you can start to figure out that attribution. And if you are getting people are understanding it the way that you want them.
Ooh, that's so interesting. And tell me a little more about these tests. Like what are they about?
Yeah. And we do a lot. So since we were founded, like, one of our big things was to really leverage behavioral science thinking and practices in the work that we do. So when we can, we incorporate a lot of that behavioral science thinking into our focus groups, into our testing groups. To really understand how people are thinking. We always talk about, we like to understand how people think, not just what they think. So it's not just asking people, which one do you like better? Or do you like this or do you not like this? We have a few different methods where we can really understand what people are thinking, even if it's not what they're actually saying. Or it's kind of like, by what they're saying, we can understand sort of on a deeper level what is actually resonating with.
So you're not asking the how, but the why? Like, not which one do you like, but why do you like it?
Or we don't, I mean, sort of, we wouldn't say why. We wouldn't ask them why they like it. It's more the questions that we would ask would get us to a point where we can understand some underlying thinking that they might have. So, I mean, one particular type of methodology we like to use when we can is called semiotics. And it's all about the study of images and graphics and symbols and words, and how each one how people react to them on their own, but then how people react to them maybe when they're paired together. So just as an example, so our work with Dairy Farmers of Manitoba, so we completely rebranded them a couple of years ago. And as we were working through the brand identity process, we did some semiotics testing, and we discovered that there had to be a farm plus the farmer plus the cow to come across as a dairy farm to people. If it was just a cow, if there was just a symbol of a cow, people didn't get it. If it was just a farmer, if it was just a farmer, people didn't get it. But it needed those three symbols together to really get across the idea of a dairy farm. We also were able to pull a lot of language from even just imagery and imagery to stay away from. So if it was indoors or if it was too dark or just certain things, we understood what we had to stay away from. And then even colors, what do certain colors cue as well? And so taking all of that, then we can bring all of that into our brand identities. And so that every element of a brand identity means something. It's not just, we thought this looked nice or we liked this color. Like every single piece of a brand identity has meaning to it and is ownable to that organization too.
Oh my God, that's so cool. That's so interesting. I had never heard of that before. And it's crazy the psychology that goes behind everything, right? It's so cool that you guys are using it to sort of create a brand and then the identity and how the people connect with it. That's so cool. All the research that goes behind it.
Yeah, there's a lot, and it's it depends on the projects and the budgets, and sometimes that phase can last, maybe it might be up to a year before we actually get into physical, like verbal or visual brand identity. But just making sure we really understand, and like I said, making sure that we understand what is that vision, that new vision. We've actually got a brand launching in less than 2 weeks that we've been working on for several months. And this organization, they have a big strategic transformation plans moving forward. And they realized that they needed a brand identity to go with it that would express to internal stakeholders, to their members, for advocacy, policymakers, the healthcare industry. So they understood where they stood before this vision, this big vision, and where their brand has kind of kept them. And so it was really understanding this new strategic vision for them and making sure that every element of this new brand identity really reflects them and is ownable to them. And it couldn't be any other industry. It couldn't be any other, even healthcare vertical. It is very specific to this.
Wow. It must be such a cool process to witness.
It is. And, honestly, it can be a little daunting, I would say, when we start out, because we know this is such a big undertaking for organizations and we want to make sure that we really get it right. But it is also very fun for us, I think, to really jump into something. So whether it is dairy farming or it is healthcare or it's, another rebrand that we've launched a few months ago was for the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. So really immersing ourselves in that. And so you learn so much. Like, I would never say 5 years ago would ever have thought I know as much about dairy farming as I do now, but, and it makes it really, really interesting for us as well, I think. But another great sort of rebrand to talk about is the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, because we did get a chance to do semiotic testing, and we did a very lengthy upfront process where we fielded a study across Canada to understand people's thoughts on human rights and how they understand it and how they perceive it and what they believe about it. And then we also got to do semiotic testing. And so it was a lot of words, it was colors, it was imagery, photos, and graphics to really understand what resonates with people or how can we connect to human rights. So many interesting things came out of all of that really did inform the new brand. Like we can explain exactly each element of the new brand and where it came from and why it exists the way that it does.
Oh my God, that's so cool. And is it out? Like, is it live?
That one is, yes, that one is. So with the museum, they opened in 2014. And at that time, they really only had their building. They have an amazing, like the building itself, if you've ever been there, it's in Winnipeg, incredible architecture and structure. And so their branding at that time reflected that. Mm-hmm. But 10 years in, they could then talk more and be about the stories that they house inside and the human rights stories that they tell. And so the new brand really is all about that. And the museum being a space, but as a catalyst for change in human rights. And so, so that was launched. We probably first launched it almost a year ago, but it does continue to be rolled.
Oh my God, I need to check it out. Like, I want to see now that I know all the back process that went into it. That's so cool. It's so amazing. And I'm curious, like in organizations doing complex or change-driven work, the vision is often ahead of the language. So how do you translate something that's still evolving without oversimplifying it or locking it into something too static, too early?
Yeah. And I mean, we work very closely with our clients. So it's almost like a co-creation and making sure that we're walking everybody through every step of the process. Because a lot of times too, when we're working with organizations, a lot of the stakeholders have never gone through a rebrand process. So they're not sure how it works. But also knowing we want to make sure that everyone who needs to have a say feels like they have been part of the process as well. It's not just we go away, redo a brand and like, here's your new brand. It is a lot of steps along the way. And it is, doing that sort of upfront strategic part first to really understand the vision or understand the organizational, the strategy and or understand what it is that they do. And then that might also be talking to internal stakeholders, maybe it's talking to people who work at that organization, talking to the founders, talking to their community to really understand, because a lot of times there is a misalignment in how organizations describe themselves. And especially I think with purpose-driven organizations, not-for-profits and charities, they think that they do one thing or they are perceived as one thing. But then when you get talking to maybe their community or to the public, it's something very different. So we've worked with an organization that provides free digital tech training and programs for underserved youth. And speaking with that brand, they said they were one thing, but when we talked to their alumni, they were described as something very different. And the role that this company played in their lives was very different than how organizations saw themselves. So it's uncovering all of those things first and getting that clarity before we get into anything like actual verbal or visual brand identity. And we always kind of get ourselves to this, what is the one thing we need to say? And it's not public facing. It's just as the organization internally, what is that one thing we need to say when we start building this brand? And it's just something that we can measure everything that we're doing back to this. And are we saying this? Is the essence of what we're saying, encapsulating this, that everyone has aligned to and approved. And then we move forward. So, I mean, it depends on the project, how much sort of testing we do along the way. But we're kind of always tying back to that one sort of, that one point. And with Humanity, one of the things that makes us a little bit different is our strategic process as well. We have a process called the Wellbeing Framework, and it's based in behavioral science. It's an evolved version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we've got 4 pillars, and it's functional well-being, social well-being, esteem well-being, and transformative well-being. And as we're working with the client, we find where they fit into, what pillar do they really fit into? And a lot of organizations, I mean, they fit a little bit into all 4 pillars in some way. But is what makes the most sense for your brand and what it is that you do, and makes the most sense for your audience and your role in their lives. So also having that definition as well, before we get into any actual rebranding, really helps focus us as well on the creative side.
I'm fascinated by all this. I mean, so a lot of your approach is like grounded in behavioral science and emotional connection. So when you're like shaping a brand, I'm curious, what's one human truth or behavior you keep coming back to, no matter like the industry or organization? Is there one or?
I mean, I don't know about a human truth, or maybe it is in terms of client side. Most more organizations, when we take them through this, they want to be transformative well-being, because it sounds like the biggest and the best, but really all four pillars are equal in importance and in value. And you really need to play where it is that you connect with your audience. And so a lot of times, a lot of brands will be in the social or esteem well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And social is all about belonging and that connection. And so a lot of brands really their role needs to play there. You're bringing people together, whether it's sports and fandom and building a community, or your food. And like, there's nothing, I think, bigger than food that brings people together and that sense of belonging. Or esteem well-being really is about you're making good choices, or by supporting a brand, you are supporting something bigger. It's making you feel part of something bigger than yourself. And transformative is about a brand helping us see the world in a different way. And honestly, like, there's big brands doing big things in all of the pillars. And it's really more important that you are in a pillar that is authentic to what you provide for your audience, because that's how they're going to.
Oh my God, I love that way of thinking. It feels so intentional.
Yeah. And I think that just helps, clarify that messaging when we get to that part. Helps us to build our audience, helps us to understand the audience if we know who we're talking to and how we need to talk to them and how we need to connect with them, rather than just constantly throwing out messaging. And that's what we try to help organizations understand, because we have worked with some organizations where some stakeholders will just be like, well, can't we just put more money behind our marketing? Just do more marketing. And that's not going to fix the problem. If people don't know who you are, if they don't know what you do, your message it doesn't matter how much money you put behind it. It's just going to go right past them. So we really need to kind of go back to that foundation and understand a lot of things before we can even move forward with the actual like visual brand identity or the verbal brand identity and the messaging. Otherwise, it's just not going to connect with anyone.
Absolutely. And you've built brands across very different contexts, from global campaigns to purpose-led organizations. I'm curious if there was one thing you had to unlearn from traditional marketing or advertising to do this kind of deeper, more transformational brand work.
Yeah. And again, great question. So like with my background, I've always come from the creative side. I've been doing this for a very long time, but working at smaller brand shops or working at bigger global agencies on bigger global clients as well. And I would say, I think what we've built at Humanity and what we've learned as we've gone along is it's not about the size of the budget. It's not just about what is the biggest creative idea. And when we were launching Humanity almost 6 years ago, and taking a look at the agency landscape, and we found that all agencies were really talking about their data and their analytics. And we're a small shop, so we can't compete with those bigger network shops that have the millions and millions of dollars to invest in big data or cultural trend platforms. Or they were talking about their creative and big, bold creative. And while we want to have both, we want to have that strong strategy. We want to have that strong, brave creative. We found that there was just something in the middle was missing, that connecting of the two, and just that deeper human element beyond, say, 56% of Canadians 20 to 25 like to do this very specific thing. So I think it was learning to go deeper and asking more questions and not just taking that more surface level data. I mean, we do still use that type of data, but what are the questions that we need to ask to truly understand that data? And why are they, like, who are these people? What is their story? What do they think? And why are they doing this very specific thing? So it was learning to understand people on a deeper level. I really love having been able now to get into this behavioral science thinking deeper. We do have a partner that we work with very closely that has very, very smart people who are trained in behavioral science and psychology and can help us ask those right questions or even just analyze the output that we're getting and just analyze that and understand it in a different
way. I love that answer. It feels so intentional. Everything feels so intentional. I love it.
Yeah. And I think that's where most of the success comes from. We do, maybe it might be a smaller brand project, or maybe it might be a one-off campaign. Maybe a client doesn't need any brand work. Maybe they just need some campaign work, and we can do that as well. But when we do get the opportunity to work with an organization on their brand from the ground up, is definitely, again, the intentional is huge, a huge part of it. And making it very ownable, making it something that, especially even internally, like the employee brand, everyone can rally around and be part of, because you have to build it up internally. You have to get that buy-in internally before anyone outside of your organization is going to buy in and believe it as well.
God, that's so interesting. And I always like to close my episodes with a question about brands. Like, what top of mind, like what are brands you are admiring at the moment or you think are doing cool work?
Oh, I mean, there is lots. Trying to think of some off the top of my head that are really interesting. I think because we are working with a client right now on a rebrand that serves the disability community. And so what I've been noticing a lot lately is just a lot more conversation about accessibility, about designing for everybody, about inclusion. And I think we've been talking about DEI for quite some time now. But I think the disability community has not been at the forefront of that conversation yet. And I'm starting to see that more and more. So I'm seeing more brands designing, whether it's their products or just designing their advertising to actually be much more inclusive. There was one I saw the other day. It was for a cartoon. And they actually brought in someone who is nonverbal, but to do the sounds and the voices of this one character instead of, and this is still very prevalent, in advertising, in TV and film, bringing in actors who are not neurodiverse, but having them play someone who is. And so slowly I'm starting to see more and more like actual representation in that space, which I'm very, very happy to see. And again, products as well, whether it's makeup tools or camping equipment, there's just some of the ones that I've seen lately where they're actually designing their products with actual inclusion first and bringing people in from the community who are actually going to be using it and testing it and making sure that it actually.
Oh my God. Like I feel my cheeks and my forehead hurt from smiling so much. That was the best answer ever. Oh my God. What a great news to start my morning. I love that.
Amazing.
Caroline, you are a gem. Like there's something really special about the way you think about brand. It's so intentional, so thoughtful, and so rooted in helping people truly understand and connect, not just see something on the surface. You can feel that everything you create has depth behind it, and that kind of clarity is so unique. I love this conversation. So thank you for sharing your experience and your perspective so openly.
Thank you. And thank you for being so like I love talking about brands. So love when I have someone who is as excited to talk about brands as I am.
I love it.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.